working the way that it should. So just let me know if you can. Whatever the case, I'm gonna like jump in here, and I've already got like a bunch of questions on YouTube. So let's just hit it and see what happens. Um, by the way, I'm painting with oil. I have a bit of linseed oil as my medium. Painting on Legion's upcoming, soon to be released oil painting paper, which yeah, they're actually just got a notification they have now in the warehouse. They have the large sheets, the large kind of parent sheets, and I'm gonna get some of those eventually. I think they're going in the mail pretty soon, so we'll see what comes. Stay tuned, and I'll definitely be announcing that. Let's see. I got a question from MJ saying, Stephen, how has the Wednesday stream schedule experience been? So, like every Wednesday at 4 p.m., right? I'm going to be streaming here on YouTube, and it's usually going to be like me drawing or painting, but like occasionally, like the other day, I did a lecture on why most people don't learn to draw. Like what are the main kind of stumbling blocks in people's kind of drawing education and stuff, and that was like really exciting. So sometimes I'll do stuff like that, but mostly it'll be me working. I found it kind of okay. I mean, it gets a little bit stressful sometimes because I think, like as human beings, we're not like naturally content makers, like I really have to stretch myself a lot to make sure that I kind of know what I'm doing that week, and like what's coming out, and like all the other stuff that I got going on. But I have a kind of commitment to growing this YouTube channel, and I really want to do that. So I'm gonna stick to my schedule, and like for all of you out there that you're thinking about kind of doing something for yourself, like getting out there and doing something kind of professional with your artwork in terms of like what I'm doing, like working on social media and stuff, you got to set yourself targets. You got to set goals, and you got to kind of follow through with them. Now, that means sometimes you're going to set a goal and you're going to discover actually that you can't follow through with it. And I mean, that's just the way it goes sometimes. But for the most part, being pretty conscious of how you kind of target your activities, and you budget your time. I'm saying it like, this is this super conscious decision. Probably the reality of it is that, you kind of think maybe this would be cool, and so you try it out and you discover, wow, that was like not cool at all. Or you discover, oh, I love this, it's great. Like I can't wait to keep kind of doing this. But you'll know kind of with your gut which one of those that is, and whether or not you can kind of follow through with it. But I would say that probably the most common thing for people that are successful in the arts in general is that they don't expect things to happen quickly. They don't expect big results from small amounts of effort, and yeah, they kind of tend to follow through on things, right? Whether or not they planned really, really well, they have that ability to kind of stick to the not the assignment, but whatever, kind of goal they set for themselves. Let's see what other questions are coming in here. I've got some hello from Massachusetts and Germany, and MJ is asking, what do you advise on a commission where you are tasked to interpret the person based on the reference of his children and grandchildren's features? That sounds like an impossible commission. Frankly, I don't know what I would do with that. Well, for starters, I'll imagine that what I would want to do is to actually try to make a composite design first. I wouldn't try to like just start the artwork and just kind of see where it goes from there. I'd want to make a composite design, probably like kind of linear based, and see if I could get something with like limited values that actually satisfied the brief for that commission, because you're in a really super challenging place trying to meet someone else's expectations when they don't even really know what their expectations are. You know, like that's a, I don't know. Whew, I'm frankly like really glad that I don't have that commission because it would be kind of exceptionally tough. I don't know if I'd be able to pull that off. Um, but anyway, we'll see. Yeah, so I'm just getting kind of a linear basis for where I want to go with this one. In general, like for a live stream like this, I'm not going to have time to do like a whole picture. So I'm going to do my best to just, you know, play the hits here. I have a sense that I do want to paint the hair. Whether or not I'll be able to do that like on the live stream, I don't know. Maybe I'll put some color notes up there, but I have a plan to maybe work for, I don't know, a couple hours. We'll see how like well my voice holds up and and my patience for painting on camera. Let's see. Beth is asking, did you know Tom Petty and Bob Ross were also from Florida? I did know Tom Petty was from Florida. Tom Petty was from, I think, Gainesville, Florida, right? And yeah, go Gators. But yeah, Tom Petty, you know, he was someone, he had a few like hit songs that were just everything a hit song was supposed to be, you know. I thought Tom Petty was like really cool actually. And then who was the other one? Bob Ross. I didn't know Bob Ross was from Florida. Where in Florida he was from? If I had to guess where Bob Ross was from in Florida, I'm gonna go ahead and say that I think it was the Orlando region. I'm gonna say somewhere in Central Florida. That's my view of Bob Ross. Although, like in a lot of his paintings, aren't there like evergreen trees and mountains and stuff? So Florida is like probably one of the flattest states in the United States, so not a lot of mountains around there. So if I had to guess, I'd say Orlando. If I guessed a second time, I would say maybe like closer to the Panhandle, Tallahassee, Florida, maybe. But I'm open to be wrong about that. Let me know in the comments if you happen to know where Bob Ross was born. So I'm just going to knock a key in here. By the way, look at how light this seems here, how dark it seems here. This is why it's kind of challenging to work on white paper. And how it's also always nice to get a sense of what your darkest darks are going to be, along with your lightest lights, kind of early on in the painting process. Bob Ross. Bob Ross is from Florida. You learn something every day, don't you? Let's see. So I think we got some nice, rich, dark areas here. Right. So lightest, darkest, that's what I think I can kind of do. And try and work outward from there. What I really want to do is get kind of like a base lay-in for what I think kind of all the halftones in the face are going to be, and then kind of work outward from there. Now, I know this is like a really cool looking temperature, but I'm intent upon kind of changing that a little bit later. I think I want to lay it in light, and I want to lay it in cool, and then, or relatively cool, and then I want to work outward from there. You know, this Alla Prima business can be challenging, especially if you start out like too particular. You know, if you start out like getting into too much of like the smaller kind of nuances of things, I think that's always going to leave you in a kind of tough spot. So this is me kind of going in guns blazing, you know, just trying to see if I can lay in some color values that'll work. Right. Agassi Reyes says, oh, wait, no, there's more questions that came before that. Joke I Knee says, any advice to steer people away from using bad reference photos for portrait commissions? I love painting people, but hate badly. It's smiling, filtered selfies. Just get on with it or refuse. You know, it all depends on whether or not you can refuse. Yeah. Um, I think that early on you're just trying to get the bills paid. Give it a shot. I mean, what the heck, it's better to have like a bird in the hand than one in the bush, like waiting around for the perfect commission or till all the commissions fit what you want them to be is probably a recipe for I don't know, like being broke for a little bit too long. Um, so maybe think about just giving them a shot if that's what you need. In terms of like what I say, to people in like commission circumstances, um, in general, I just start with the premise that like, well, all right. So where I'm at the moment, I take on commissions sometimes if the project is kind of interesting. Um, and with that in mind, when someone approaches, you usually get some email that's like something along the lines of, really love your work, et cetera, et cetera. I'm interested in a commission. Do you take commissions? Usually, like I don't really kind of advertise it, so people are kind of wondering like if it's even something that I do. So they'll ask, and I'll answer like that. After that, I'll respond to an email saying that like, well, it depends upon the project, et cetera, and then we'll just start a conversation about like, well, what kind of project do you have in mind? Usually that's kind of my question, and they'll respond and say, well, I want you to paint my kids, or I want you to paint this, or I want you to paint that, or whatever it is, and if that sounds interesting, we'll go ahead and I'll just say like, that sounds great. Just so you know, like I'm not like a reproducer of photographs. Like I don't take photographs and turn them into paint. Like, we're gonna have to find like some really good reference material, and if you're interested in doing that, let's kind of keep talking about stuff. And yeah, the most important thing probably with doing commissions to remember, and this is a hard one because as artists maybe we're not used to like talking about cash, but I insist on a 50% deposit. As part of the contract that I use for commissions, there's a 50% deposit up front that is not refundable once we kind of agree the parameters of the project. That's why like I try to get a feeling of whether or not it's going to be a fit, before saying, yeah, let's like go ahead with it. Because if it's a project we both believe in, I'm going to get a deposit because I'm not going to get left, hanging in the breeze, so to speak. And most people should really understand that, if they're commissioning you and they value your work, that's not going to be that's not going to get in the way of them, taking this project to the next phase. I think maybe sometimes artists don't want to like spook a client, by saying, yeah, I need a deposit or whatever. But the reality is that they'll probably be just fine with it. Or at least I've never had somebody come back to me and go like, no, a deposit's a problem, I can't do that. I've always had a positive response to it. But anyway, that's probably the biggest thing. Eventually, by the way, that commission contract is a part of something I want to do on Patreon. Like I actually want to do a little primer for like professional artists, like kind of things you need to know, like this, like how to talk with clients and how to approach a commission. And then I'm going to include things like my commission contract. I'll include things like the contract for, like also if you're going to, for instance, use model reference images, right? Like I have to get like release forms signed for like even the model that you see on the screen right now. There's what's called a model release. It's their agreement to allow you to have the image rights for for the source image that you're using, so that you can reproduce it in whatever way that you want to. That's more important. Like, by the way, if you're doing what I'm doing, you're kind of teaching online and you're providing other people with source images, that stuff becomes important more for that reason than just for, like, if you're going to just make a painting of somebody, then yeah, you just make a painting of them. Let's see. Agassi Reyes says, what are your thoughts on composition? I listened to Draftsman podcast where Marcel and Stan basically talked about that composition is about feel. Well, art is about feel. I mean, eventually it all boils down to conveying something, communicating something, right? So this is also where, like, people, I think, get hung up a little bit when you say that art is about communication. People start to think, well, what are other forms of communication? Like, for instance, like a book is a form of communication, and a film is a form of communication, and like there's all these different ways that you can communicate. Visual communication doesn't have to be the same as like what I would call like literary communication or the way stories are told, like in movies. A lot of times, communication in the kind of 2D art world is a little bit more abstract than that. I mean, all of that is like another subject, kind of for another time. But I would go as far as to say I'm pretty certain that if Marshall and Stan were talking about composition, that they would have communicated that, while in the end, right, composition is about feel. On the way to conveying a feeling, there are a lot of like kind of core principles, a lot of stuff that you can rely on to be consistent in the kind of world of expression, right? So it's not only about feeling, although of course, like, it has an element of it that is about feeling as well, because I mean, arguably, everything in the art world is about feeling eventually, right? I think of athletes, but it's just as easy to think of like dancers, for instance, right? Dancers aren't there to only make the choreography, like only to reproduce the steps that were laid ahead of them. They're there also to like interpret them and to make them more expressive, so yeah, like, just like in dancing, you don't just jump out on a stage and do anything, right? You have choreography. I think that there are like underlying principles in composition that are useful for an artist to know, even if eventually you find that what you want to do is not so squarely within the middle of the frame of composition as we understand it. Like, a lot of what I do, for instance, like the composition is really effectively very simple. We're really just talking mostly about heads, about making a good portrait, good head, and there are some compositional principles inside of that, which, by the way, is a good segue into what's happening November 15th. So November 15th, the Bridgeman, the first volume of my Bridgeman course is coming out. It's about a book by the great representational artist and teacher George Bridgeman, and it's going to be going through his book about portraiture kind of page by page in a way. But the first volume of that is coming out on November 15th. For patrons only, and it is actually one of the rarest things. It's actually a downloadable lesson, so you can just take it, download it, watch it whenever you want, online, offline, whatever. There's no limitations to that, and you can have it kind of for forever. So that's coming up November 15th. If you're interested, all you got to do is be a subscriber on Patreon, which is not complicated or expensive. So anyway, that's my due diligence. This is me just telling people what's happening there. Let's see. Rumen Plemenov says, what does the curve representing your drawing skills over the last 20 years look like? Rumen has some like banging questions. Like, I feel like I'm always getting a question from Rumen and going like, yeah, no, that's a good one. So initially, your curve is pretty dramatic. I think when you first learn about anything about drawing, it's quite a rapid improvement that occurs, right? But eventually that slows down, of course. I think that in a way, the curve will be. I'm not going to paint it on here because eventually this is a painting. Maybe, you know what? Maybe it's actually nice to. Can you guys still see like down here? So I would say that the initial curve is upward like this. Let me just move something on my desktop. All right, so you start out here knowing nothing. I think the curve starts out like this, plateaus, moves upward, plateaus, moves upward, plateaus, moves upward, and so on. Hopefully, in the longest run, that plateau isn't like permanent, right? That in fact you always kind of want to be improving. However, there's a difference in between your motivation when you're improving versus when, let's say, like as a professional, you need to be kind of executing, right? Like when you're doing these commissions we're talking about, you don't want to have like a growth spurt in the middle of that. Like you want to just be, have your skills honed and work on them and kind of execute a your vision or the client's vision or whatever it is. So yeah, hopefully your curve kind of continues going upward. But that's where your own sense of like being inquisitive kind of comes in. I think that I'm not sure if I can say that there's like some, because I've watched a lot of students over the years, and what I'm always kind of careful to observe, I think when I'm looking at a student's progress is, does it seem like they will continue progressing after they leave the school? Like that's usually my kind of primary concern, because I know that with like close attention and study, like if you're in my mentorship program, like I know that I can get that curve moving upward. But for a student, eventually you need to be in control of that yourself. Like you need to be self-motivated, and how to actualize that like self-motivation is something that I kind of think about a lot. I know that most of what we do throughout the day and throughout our lives, probably by default, is about like things we do by habit. And so if you're going to continue growing as an artist, for instance, you need to develop like a habit of growth. How do you do that? Well, the question gets more complicated when you start looking deeply into it. There's a lot of things kind of involved. And in fact, I don't remember at all what the question was. This is like when I do these like painting streams and it gets really intense. This is when I start to like forget what the question was. Yeah, all right. So David Rodriguez asked, do you still use tools to measure other than your own observation? I would like to do an accurate drawing only using my eyes, but it's very complicated. I think that, what you eventually want is a good kind of system, which is to say that, when I'm drawing and painting, I usually have like a pretty good idea of like what my needs are in the moment. And I don't do like a ton of improvisation in terms of like process or like what I know the process kind of needs to be. As you can see with this, like I kind of start out in one way and just kind of move outward from there. And I kind of execute that to the best of my ability in the time that I have. So tools of observation, personally, usually when I'm like starting out a drawing like this one, or like when I made the drawing for this one, I'll use just comparative measurements and then like ideas about construction, which essentially when we say construction, I'm just talking about like concepts of like 2D design that leave a three-dimensional conception of the body on the page. So it's all about getting into that 3D place. So not a lot of measuring. I use some measuring. I mean, naturally, you got to use some. It would be, I think, unwise to to just leave it completely behind and leave it totally to chance. I'd like a little bit more security than that. Yeah, so getting this closer to being blocked in, we're still a long ways off from what the goal is eventually. But, I mean, that's trusting the process. You just got to keep going, keep dialing in the shapes, keep working with the color values, trusting the process a bit. See what other questions are coming in. Shaz says, thinking about the atelier tier on your Patreon, do you think the skills, techniques I would learn would be transferable to creating more imaginative art? Well, I think that I've talked about this before. There's some yeses and some nos in that. Just to be like totally transparent about it. I think that if you want to learn to draw about fantasy worlds, those fantasy worlds still operate within similar parameters to what our own kind of visual world does, right? So even if there's like a dragon or a spaceship or whatever, there's still also like light and shadow, and there's still like light sources and form and structure, planes. So in that sense, 100%, like what you learn from my courses will absolutely translate into, working in a lot of different genres. I think though that there's going to be additional skills that you're going to want. I think you're going to probably want to find some additional learning that speaks to, for instance, the need to kind of draw from imagination. Like that's something that I don't really cover in my courses, just because, again, my work is probably 99% about what I'm seeing. So the need for doing something out of my head is relatively minimal. I think that for sure, if you have an affinity for like my communication, and the way that I explain things and stuff like that, then for sure, like even if you're going into a different genre, I think that honestly, even if you're going into like abstract expressionism, I would say that you still actually could learn a lot from a lot of the lessons on my page. Let's see. Z says, when I draw on paper with 100% cotton like Arsha's, I sometimes damage the paper, especially when I use a blending stump. Do you face this problem sometimes? When you say Arsha's, what I'm guessing that you're talking about actually is an Arsha's paper that is like a hot press watercolor paper. Now, would I mess up a hot press watercolor paper? Probably. I think that hot press watercolor paper is very easy to damage. And so because of that, I think that probably I would damage it as well. Yeah. Yeah, so pretty much. Yeah, I think just about anybody would do, just because it's like I said, it's pretty easy to damage that stuff. Unfortunately, that's why I don't work on like hot press watercolor paper. It's just too treacherous in terms of being able to be damaged like so easily. Let's see. Levi Goth says, I'm a beginner. Any advice on pricing drawing study, or is it okay to sell it? Thanks for your knowledge and wisdom. Yeah, I mean, naturally, the pricing question is like always there for artists, right? Like, because, I mean, yeah, eventually what? It's a job. So let's figure out how do we make that work. I think some of it too is like kind of based on need. Like I was talking to a student the other day and she was saying, I've been doing these portraits and like people will commission me for them. How much do you think I should charge? Like if you did the drawing, how much would you charge for it? And I mean, the first problem with that really is that, I'm at a very different stage in my career. And also like I have a different budget for my business. So like what I would need to charge for something to be valuable for me would be drastically different than what she would. Um, so for her, like she'd been charging, a very small amount. And, when I told her what I would charge, she went, oh, no, I mean, I should be charging so much more. And had this kind of, feeling of guilt about it, which I think is totally not at all necessary. Like, it just kind of depends upon, first of all, like, what can you charge, right? So, like, what are people willing to pay for your work? But also then you want to think about, like, what do you actually need to get from your work? Like, do you make one work per year? If so, like, then wow, you're going to need to charge probably a lot of money in order to survive as a business if you're doing that, right? Do you make 10 drawings a month? Well, if so, then you have a lot to work with in terms of like price range. Now it can be a little bit of like a moving target, I think, for artists because and I remember this from my student days. I was just trying to figure out how to make the work. And I think in some ways, I don't want to be, like a Debbie Downer or whatever, but I think that you just want to keep yourself in front of an easel probably if you're a student. So I would say, price them to sell, price them low, price them so that you can, continue studying online, continue to buy art supplies, continue to do whatever you need to do to make the progress that you need to make. And I don't think that like early on, especially when you're like selling kind of person to person in a way, I almost don't think it really matters all that much what you charge for it. I mean, later on, you're selling through galleries or something, and you have that very special kind of 50%, to think about. Then maybe we need to have another conversation. But if you're a student, just it's better to have it out the door than it is to have it with you. So I think just charge a relatively small amount. Unless, by the way, like, and we act like this is shaped by like really complicated like market movements and things, but like also who are the people that like that are going to be buying your work, and what is their budget? Frankly, I mean, if you're a member of the aristocracy and all the people are like dukes and duchesses and so on, and they have like family money that goes back many generations, probably you could charge a little bit more just starting out. But if not, then consider your market. I mean, it's just, I mean, frankly, like this is not super complicated stuff, but it's just try to find a number that you think you can move the drawing at, if that's where you're kind of at. And that's from what you say, it sounds like you're kind of somebody starting out and you're just trying to keep the lights on, keep moving, keep working, keep learning. Better to have a sale than not to. Let's see. MJ is asking, the commission was about an ancestor of their family and wanted an artist's interpretation based on photos of his children and grandchildren. Sounds like it's very difficult. Bob Ross is born in Daytona, Florida. Listen, this is squarely Central Florida. In fact, a very good friend of mine, Steve Forster, is from, well, he's an artist, by the way. I don't bring him up for no reason, but he's an artist. He runs the Long Island Academy of Fine Art. But he was born in a place called Deltona, which, if you can believe it, was halfway in between Daytona and DeLand. So in between Daytona, Florida and DeLand, Florida, there is Deltona. Really creative name. Great job on that whatever city commission for naming. Let's see. Lasso is asking if this is oil painting. It definitely is oil painting. Someone who has like a really self-effacing screen name. sad idiot, which that's not my feeling, is asking, regarding study schedules, do you promote the constant focused study of a single art discipline? For example, studying perspective for one 15-week semester while simultaneously keeping a minor focus, ideally a previously studied fundamental to prevent atrophy. That's a wordy question. But essentially, like if I boil it down, what I think that you're asking is, how do you manage to move ahead while also not regressing in some previous area by virtue of not kind of practicing in that. Representation, fortunately, in a lot of ways, is pretty holistic, meaning that in order to paint a really good head, for instance, you need to have a variety of skills. What this means is that usually, like when you're practicing representational painting, you are practicing color, you are practicing design, you are practicing, several different kind of skills or skill bases, right? So, the idea of like kind of losing one or one kind of fading a little bit, I think it's often not really gonna happen all that much. Ideally, like one will kind of just bleed a little bit into the other one as new kind of concepts are introduced. In terms of like learning perspective, again, just search for maybe how that integrates into what your subject matter is. Like even for painting a head, perspective is a thing. It's something that is useful and necessary when you're learning to paint heads. So I would try to select a range of subject matter, whether it's portraiture or whatever it is, and see how the skills that you're learning actually align with that. More so than maybe viewing them as like totally separate disciplines and trying to study them sort of, I want to say like a la carte, but like what I mean just is like trying to study them like one by one. Yeah, I'm not sure that that's altogether necessary. Yeah, so anyway, I'm blocked in here a little bit, and wow, it looks super rough, but that is Alla Prima for you folks. Let's see if I can get a little bit of a lighter key. I'm going to see if I can push my lightest light here a little bit further. I feel like probably any lighter than that, and I'm going to regret it. So I'm going to make some color notes here. Kind of value notes, really. Then I need to start like kind of darkening everything down around that. David Taylor is asking, have you considered or would you ever consider doing a joint painting with your wife, possibly on YouTube? Yeah, hey, considering. It's easy to say considering. So sure, why not? Whether or not we ever get around to it, who knows? That's just about time and timing and stuff. Yeah, time is like I remember I was talking to this guy, a sculptor that was starting. I don't know if anybody remembers, in London for a while there was a school called Lara, the London Academy of Realist Art, and the guy that was starting that up was James. He's a sculptor, a British sculptor called James something. But I was in touch with him at the time. This is like I was still in Florence, and he was kind of looking for teachers, and we were having a conversation about that. But I was like, when I was talking to him, he was in this place where he was just trying to figure out, like, even where the studio was going to be, and so he was kind of going back and forth, finding a space, but then it's not available, finding this, but then it's not right or whatever. And so he referred to space in London being like hen's teeth. And that always kind of stuck with me. And it makes me think of now, like, my time, the time that I have to do stuff is like hen's teeth. As I get, by the way, anybody north of 40 that's watching this, then for real what I'm talking about. Or maybe even some of you younger people that are studying your butts off at university or whatever. Like, you know, time is the most precious commodity. Um, so like Cornelia and I's schedules kind of lining up in a way where we could do something like that. It could happen. It could happen, but you know, it's not the most likely thing in the world. Which, by the way, FYI, update that everybody's waiting for. I'm sure nobody can wait to hear this announcement, but we've been looking for a long time for a dog, and we are on the cusp of acquiring that dog. So pretty soon in our house there will be the pitter patter of little paws on our wood floor, and we're really excited about that. So however, what that means also is that how it relates to this question is that time wise that means also that we can't be like doing things at the same time for a little while, like because the puppy's going to need attention, and it's going to need to be like kind of watched and taken care of a bit. So really happy about that. Let's see. And for those of you who are wondering, yes, it is a Svensk Dansk Gårdshund, which is a Swedish-Danish farm dog. That is the dog. I won't talk about it more until we have the dog, because we gotta pick it up, and I don't want to jinx it. Michael is asking, what's your take on the most effective way of rendering using charcoal, mass drawing or cross hatching? When you talk about efficiency, it's going to be a combo of both for sure. With charcoal, one of the ways that you can actually really speed up your process is to integrate working in a reductive manner. So actually pre-toning your paper with a bit of charcoal, and then kind of erasing away to get back to the white of the paper is a great way to make sure that you get like the most out of your time when you're working with charcoal. Probably the fastest way that I can think of working anyway. By the way, I'm just trying to get like some tonal notes in here to see like where this one needs to go eventually. Trying to get some big planes established. Right now we're in a really super muddy place, but you got to pass through that if you're going to get to the good stuff. Let's see what else is going on. Sad Idiot is asking, or studying one topic a day, cycling between the study of fun and keeping track of the amount of time spent. Again, it depends a little bit just on like what you're trying to learn. If you're trying to learn like drawing from your head, I think that more rapid drawing is going to be super vital and valuable. And if you're trying to learn like to do what I do, like really kind of highly rendered stuff, then you need to like really take a lot of time to do it, because it's unlikely to arrive very quickly. You're going to need to spend a lot of time just to like build up value, for instance. Like even that takes a long time. So it's all about the course that you're trying to study. So if you're trying to do what I do, I would say your best bet is to work mostly on a little bit more protracted drawings that take you a little bit longer to do, but eventually they give you the kind of full range of problems, which is to say that like blocking in has one set of you call it problems, whatever. Requires one set of solutions, and then rendering kind of requires slightly different solutions, and you just have to kind of go through each of them enough times to have that experience to kind of know what's necessary. See if I can get in under this ear. Right, people, what is happening? Oh, hey, I'm a YouTuber, right? So if you think the content's interesting or whatever, you're having fun here, please remember to like this video, smash the like button. Doesn't cost you anything and it really helps me a lot. And if you enjoy this kind of content, I do go live every Wednesday. So if you want to subscribe to the channel, also that will make sure that you don't miss any of my live streams and any opportunities to kind of paint along or do whatever we're kind of getting up to at that time. So yeah, that's it. Like button, subscribe button, all that stuff. Appreciate it very much. Let's see, the next question. Alex Tibbet says, I was replying here from Instagram. Didn't know this is live on YouTube as well. I have a question though. What is the paper that you're using? Yeah, so this paper right here is an oil painting paper from Legion, which is the same company that makes Stonehenge paper. Now, I have advanced copies of this because, I don't know, I guess I'm in the teaching industry, and so sometimes you get kind of cool opportunities to, yeah, get something in advance of it being available to the public. But it's going public soon. It's November right now. I just got notified they have it in the warehouse now, the paper, and that means that very soon it's going to be available to everybody out there in the world who wants to paint on this oil painting paper that I'm using, which is super exciting news because I think it's like really, really good stuff. Let's see. Hang on. There's some questions, but I got to get them in the right order. Yeah, I got to scroll back a bit. Hang on, folks. Right, let's see. Chris N is saying, yeah, Bob Ross was born in Daytona, but raised in Orlando. Listen, I'm telling you right now, I had no idea about this, and if you were watching the stream earlier, you will know. I guessed Orlando, which apparently I guess I'm like really, really proud of. But the point I want to make is that Bob Ross, as a Floridian and like knowing the character of different Floridians, he seems a lot like a Central Floridian. That would be, it was definitely my guess when it came to thinking of where he would be from in Florida. Bob Ross. Of course he's a Floridian. He had to be a Floridian. Why not? Rumen Plamenov says, do you have any opinion of yours regarding art that is generally controversial? Well, you know, I've thought for a long time that artwork, right, or spending time with artwork, when you go to like a show, an exhibition, or a museum, or whatever, and you're like spending whatever 20 minutes, you know, looking at a painting, I've come to think of this kind of like spending time with like that person or with that artist. And as such, like for as many personalities as there are going to be paintings that like follow that personality. And some people are provocateurs. Some people really want to like push the envelope in terms of like what people are comfortable with, or challenge their preconceptions about things. And so I think that it's just part of the stream, you know, like it's just part of the flow, and there's going to be people that for whom that's like really important, and there's going to be people for whom like they want their artwork to do something very different from that. I think both are completely valid. I get so annoyed when people with artwork, you know, feel this need to create some kind of false dichotomy that either art can be like this or it can be like that, you know. These are clearly not students of history, because you will understand that as many different versions of artwork there can be, there have been, and all of them kind of have their place in history. Even mundane work, you know, it has a place. It exists. So what? Like, get over yourself, get over it, and understand that art can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people. Um, or you can just put in front of everything you say art that I like, dot dot dot, looks like this. So my feeling on controversial art, it's, by the way, like, not usually like all that into controversial art. It's just not my vibe. I don't mind it, but if I mean, controversial. Also, what do we mean by controversial? Like, usually, I think that there are artists and there's artwork that focuses on the grotesque or focuses on aspects of humanity that are I don't know, like much more negative. Again, like not a problem, but do I gravitate towards it? No, I kind of like art that's a little bit more life affirming, artwork that makes me feel, yeah, like full of something other than disgust. But that's hey, that's just for me. That's my vibe. And if you got a different one, I think it's great. But let's just stop with the whole exclusivity thing. Nobody is like the owner of what artwork can be or how it's supposed to be expressed. It's a communal thing, and we all have kind of a piece of it, obviously. Even if all you're doing is little head studies like this. Afnan Haya says, "What do you think about practice and knowledge about art or anything else? How much practice and how much knowledge do we need?" Well, I don't know. I mean, it's a cool. I guess what we're saying is like, where's the line for being a student versus when is enough enough, and like we can kind of go out into the world. I don't know. I mean, I don't I don't think like I'll ever stop learning stuff. Like every time that I engage with a new topic, like I'm looking at it as a student. When I'm looking at Bridgeman, for instance, with this special lesson that I'm releasing, when I'm looking at Bridgeman, I'm looking at it again like as a student would look at Bridgman, and I'm trying to see, from that perspective, what would be the most valuable thing to explain about this page of this book, or like, the most valuable thing to unpack about this idea. So hopefully I'll always be able to do that. I feel like hopefully I'll always be like figuring something out or learning something about painting or art or myself or whatever. And in a way, that's what fuels a lot of the, like expression in my work to whatever extent you can say that I make expressive work. It's expressing my curiosity, I think, about the world. So hopefully we don't stop. Hopefully we're just learning all the time, and we keep that kind of curiosity burning, That would be the ideal situation, I think. Emmanuel Alou says, "Will you show how to draw multiple figures in various perspectives?" Definitely not on this live stream, but like in general in the future, I don't think really that's gonna be my area of like for my teaching. I think that there are plenty of really, really great teachers that do that already and have such a deep expertise in that area that I might not consider that. No, probably not is the answer. Which is a rarity, because like most things, I think when I hear them suggested, I'm like, oh, that sounds like a fun idea. Like I'd love to like figure that out. And it's not that I wouldn't like to figure out this other one. It's just I think that it's a little bit outside the paradigm where I work. Like most of my work is, yeah, primarily like focused on portraiture, and so because of that, it keeps you in a place that's, I don't know, relatively static, like we are in now. static, I mean, but you understand what I mean, like that it's not, I'm not going to be like a storyboard artist, for instance. Like that's not going to be a part of my evolution as far as I can tell, which I think is an area where you would obviously need a lot of that skill set. Agassi Reyes says, you're one of the artists that pushes me to improve my art skills. My country only has one atelier, and the streams are very informative. Thank you. That's what I'm here for. Let's see what else. Vijay Kumar says, please plan a studio tour. I really want to see how you light your subject and easels and your general setup. I did, by the way, I did on a previous stream promise that. And I'm standing by it. I'm going to do it. But it's just a matter of, folks, it's a matter of time, which is probably like a pretty common refrain from my live streams. But I mean, genuinely, it is. Like, I will do a studio tour. I'd love to do a studio tour, but I also want to do like a good one. I don't want to be like just holding my iPhone and like running around my studio with it. I want it to look good. So when you want to do that, then it's going to take like a little bit of time. That's just how it is. Speaking of time, let's see if I can get this anywhere by the time we're like done with this live stream. Got a long way to go. So there's like 2 flies in my entire studio, and they always want to be like right around my painting area. Can't stand it. Let's see what else is going on. Michaela is saying, how do you apply bony landmarks at the head on your portrait? Well, first you got to know where they are, what they are. Mostly I use them in the kind of block-in phase. Like at this point, I'm working. Well, I don't want to say like I'm not using them now. Like obviously, with that knowledge, you use that knowledge kind of constantly. But I think that there's maybe sometimes like some misinterpretation about like bony points and like how we use bony points and like what it means to use anatomy in your work. Like here, I'm still using anatomy. I'm thinking about the shape of the zygomatic bone. I'm thinking about, like the planes of the head, such as I know that they are. Whether or not it looks like an anatomical diagram, it doesn't mean that you're not using it if it doesn't look like an anatomical diagram, I guess is what I'm saying. So, how do you use it? You hopefully integrate it seamlessly into your painting process, meaning that you're always focused on making a painting, and that a part of that, something that's assisting you in doing that is your knowledge of like anatomy and structure and so on. So how do you do it? I mean, you just integrate it with your other skill sets. I guess it's a complicated question. Like, how do you do it? It's like, well, in some ways, like, yeah, you just paint the head. And you trust that the knowledge that you've built up, that you're able to kind of like integrate that, or use that to help you understand the picture you're trying to make. Like I am very slowly trying to make a picture here. We're getting somewhere though. We're getting like closer to, her looking like something. It's just going to be a little while before that gets anywhere like really satisfying. By the way, this is like where this oil painting paper really starts to like pay you back. Like once you've actually filled up most of the space where you need to paint, that's when things get like really good on this paper. Everything leading up to that is usually a bit of a challenge, a bit of a pain maybe sometimes, but what it costs you to start, it'll definitely like pay back in terms of, when you want to get like a nice clear like brush stroke of color value going. Like this paper is always going to do that for you, which is really, really, really great. FYI, I'm not sponsored at all by them or anything. We have a totally just mutually admirational whatever relationship. Like I just think their paper is really good, and they obviously are happy that I think that their paper is very good. So they're happy to send me stuff, but as far as promotion's concerned, that's all there is to it. Let's see. Abdo Anaji says, can we have forms in shadows as much as in light, just like a camera with high dynamic range? Yeah, absolutely. You know, look to, I mean, whenever you're wondering, right, can I do something? Like, is this possible? Like, is this okay in artwork? Like, just go look at art history. This is why, you know, I really, this is the proof. You know, when you hear me say, like, there's not like rules. You can't say like painting has to be like this. Just go look at all of art history ever as like an example of like what's possible. What can you do? You'll see, you know, reppin paintings painted thinly. You'll see, you know, whatever. I don't know. I'm just trying to think of like wild examples, things that people don't see coming. You'll see all the variations that you can see in like how things get done. You'll see stuff thinly painted, thickly painted. You'll see it painted in ways that you never thought of. But all of them are there. They exist. Paintings can be done that way. So when you hear like anybody dogmatically presenting that what painting, you know, is a closed thing and it has to be like this, nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Oh, yeah. I mean that painting, like the painting from photos to painting from life thing. You know, like Dagnan Bouveray used photographs. You know, like there's historical record of great painters, you know, making fantastic paintings using photographs. So where is the argument when you're, anyway, whatever. I'm not gonna go down that rabbit hole because I'm frankly not interested. But look at art history. That's your precedent for whether you can or can't do something. Felina Kithalawa says, who handles your Instagram account? I tried to reach you several times, but it went wrong. I handle my Instagram account. I always have. You know, if you do message me on Instagram, you know, sometimes honestly, I'm just not going to be able to get back to you. I do get a lot of messages. And if it's something I feel like I can help with, then for sure, you know, I'll respond. But sometimes, you know, like people will message me and ask like, you know, can you give me a critique of my artwork or this and that? And it's like, no, that's great. But, you know, like that's my job. Like I do that for a living. So I don't just do it as a, yeah, just, you know, for free if you ask. So if I don't respond yet, it's just usually because like I feel like, oh, I just don't really have anything useful for you here, or it's kind of outside of my job description kind of. Anyway, yeah, so I'm sorry about that, but sometimes I definitely don't get back to all messages. Let's see. Barbecue Ted is asking, any plans for a figure drawing course? People, let me unpack. No, I'm not. You know what? I'm not going to give you the whole story, right? But suffice to say, yes, there are plans. They are in the works. There's a lot of things, a lot of moving, shifting pieces on this chessboard of my professional life. One of which is where to give a home to my figure painting course, or figure drawing course. Obviously, first of all. Working on it is probably the best that I can say with any degree of certainty. It's just, yep, I definitely have a plan for it. That's the yes or no answer. Let's see if some of you are asking about my palette. All of that, by the way, there's an FAQ link in the description of this video. It takes you to my Patreon, and for free, you can get all that information from there. Let's see. Hang on. Let's see. I'm just looking for a good question here. Agassi Reyes is saying, do you stream about your soon-to-be dog? LOL. The soon-to-be dog will absolutely be a part of my live streams. There will be appearances. They will be very cute. I will be way too excited about them. And if you really, really dislike dogs, it's going to suck for you. Because I'm really, really excited to have a dog. Cornelia is very excited to have a dog. We're really, really looking forward to that that becoming a part of our lives. So, yeah. I don't want to jinx it, though. That's the last I say about it. What else is going on? Frederick Letter Blair says, is it okay to grind pastel into powder and mix it with oil to replace oil paint? Sometimes I paint at home. My family hates the smell of oil paint. I'm thinking of doing this with smellless oil. You just need to make sure you got a good drying oil. I mean, that would be my only concern there, is that, you know, if you're using an oil, the reason we use linseed oil, right, is that it dries to a really nice, firm paint film. It dries relatively quickly. Yeah, over time, there's kind of minimal damage that can occur to it. So with all those things taken care of, and there's a lot of different oils. I mean, there's poppy oil, there's walnut oil, there's linseed oil, there's, yeah, a lot of different kinds of drying oil that you can use to kind of get whatever effect you're kind of looking for. I think you can, by the way, you don't need to use pastels. You can probably just buy pigments or whatever from, there's a lot of like online shops. I think in Europe, there's a shop called Kramer that I think you can find online. I think it's Kremer or something like that. That sells like unbound pigments and stuff. But you just got to find a distributor who sells that stuff and get on board, and yeah, you're in. By the way, we're finally getting to a place where this portrait halfway looks like something, so at least I feel like I'm doing part of my job here. You know, these live streams, it's like, you know, I'll give myself the excuse and say, like, I'm kind of halfway paying attention to painting, halfway paying attention to live streaming. So I'm sure I'm not like producing my absolute best work, but that's why after I get off the live stream, I probably spend like a couple hours just fixing all the stuff I did during the live stream that was no good. But maybe that's like, you know, oil painting secrets. Maybe I shouldn't tell everybody about that. Let's see. MJ Artwork is saying, which do you prefer to draw on? White paper, paper tone with graphite, or paper tone with ink? A lot of times when I'll like tone a paper, like pre-tone a paper, I'll actually use charcoal rather than graphite. Just as an aside, I find this also just because like I think that charcoal's like a little bit easier to erase away rather than graphite. Has like a nice kind of softer, warmer tone, and so I'll tend to use that, like I said, instead of. I'll tend to use that. Sorry, I just need to make this little shape here. I tend to use graphite instead of, or charcoal instead of graphite when toning paper for drawing. If I'm going with like a dry tone. So it's like dry toning and wet toning. If I'm going with, whatever, I'm just repeating myself. Because I'm like trying to like actually paint this thing. And so I'm not concentrated on the answer to that question. But I think I answered it. There's like an eyelash back here that I'm trying to give some indication of, but it looks really awful, really wretched, terrible. It'll definitely be in the fix it later column. Let's see. JD Anarchy. No, there's somebody else is saying. Susan P. Faust is saying, but doesn't charcoal underdrawing mix with the oil paint? Do you fix the charcoal? Usually, if I'm working with a charcoal drawing on a canvas before I paint it, then yes, I will use some SpectraFix to fix the charcoal in place so that it doesn't like jump off into the paint so much. That being said, it's not like a little bit of charcoal in your paint is kind of like the end of the world. I mean, charcoal is just another pigment, you know. It's not the relative like plus minus like value to efficacy there is relatively small. I wouldn't even really worry about it if there's charcoal in your oil paint. It just means that it's maybe a tiny bit more challenging to block in, but after that, I don't think it matters at all. Let's see. Yes. So Susan P. Faust is saying the jaw is wider. Something you should know about this, actually, is that I'm looking at this here, right? And you can see this brush, to my eye, is perfectly horizontal. What you see on your screen, though, is that it's tilted. That's because there is a perspective at play here. You see as I move this, by the way, perfectly vertical. As I move it down here, you can see that on the left, it's lower, and on the right, it's higher. As I move it up, on the left, it's higher. On the right, it's lower. This is actually a little lesson in perspective. So eventually, these two lines that I'm making, parallel lines that I'm making with a brush, in perspective, eventually they would converge far, far out to the right, meaning that my drawing is like tilted in depth here, and therefore is actually shrunken in its horizontal proportion and stretched in its vertical proportion. So while I appreciate definitely that input, there's a very good reason actually for why it looks a lot more narrow. JD Anarchy is asking, I'm finding it harder to finish bigger works lately, but on the other hand, I have been sketching like mad. Any tips to help focus on bigger projects? I always had that problem too, actually. So, I mean, like tips. I don't know. For me, it's all about like my level of investment at the beginning. Like if I have an idea that I really believe in, I know that I can come back to it. However, there's like plenty of ideas that I kind of get into, but I don't think I really believe in them. Like, you know, I thought, oh, it's kind of a good idea, but then eventually I discover I'm not that into it, and usually those are the ones that I end up abandoning, and you know, like I'm not that into. So with that in mind, like advice for how to jump back into other projects. I don't know. I mean, I hate to say like not really. I mean, beyond just like, well, you know, I don't know. You just gotta like take your time and take it easy and not. I'll say this. Here's the advice I can give. Right. You can't force interest, and so with artwork, sometimes it pays to have multiple projects going, because sometimes, you know, you get to the studio and you're just not feeling it at all. Now, I'm a believer also in you know, not waiting on inspiration, and so certainly I don't want to say just wait until you're really inspired to work on it. But at the same time, you know, if we're talking about like making artwork, we're also there's not really like silver medals in painting. Like either you make a good painting, or you don't make a good painting. So you gotta find those times when you're all the way into something, and that's when I most recommend to paint. That's why it's helpful to have, you know, a few different projects kind of going at the same time. Otherwise, you know, you're gonna spend those days working hard on something that you're not really that excited about. That's tough. That's probably the toughest thing, right? So, are we recognizable? Do we have something here? I don't know. There's some interesting color values and some interesting kind of color themes happening. I'm not sure if we really have a good picture here yet, but I'm working on it. I swear I'm working on it, folks. I'll get there eventually. It just might take longer than we think. Let's see. Cat Aquarelle says, if it is a girl dog, chances are you will be the center of her universe. If it is a boy, he will probably choose Cornelia as his favorite human. As it happens, it is a girl dog. And so I'm very excited that I might be the center of her universe. Because for sure, she will be the... she can't be the center of my universe, but she's definitely going to be giving competition for time and attention. Let me just leave it that way. But yeah, so it will be a girl dog. And as soon as she is with us, I will give everybody the name. I'll give you so much more information than you're ever gonna want about my dog. So stay tuned if you want dog content. If you're dying for artist dog content, this channel will be the place for you. Yeah. Probably most of the content will be on Instagram, if I'm being totally honest. Let's see. I need to like darken these halftones. I got a lot of light halftone stuff happening here. I got to darken this down. If I'm gonna get somewhere, because eventually, like, this head needs to like turn kind of under like that. At the moment, it's still kind of relatively flat in that respect. But you know, that's what we work for. That's why you put in the hours. Let's see. Dave Emerson says, hey, Stephen, just wondering how far out you are planning the Atelier program, meaning how many lessons, courses, months, years, etc. So with the Atelier tier, we are just wrapping up the drawing portion of the Atelier tier. That's not to say I'll never make another drawing lesson for the Atelier tier. Maybe there'll be something else that kind of comes up that's kind of interesting and wants to kind of make its way into the curriculum. But the pre-planned version of the drawing program in the Atelier tier, we just broadcast the final lesson in drawing. That's advanced cast drawing on tone paper with graphite and white chalk. Now, we're moving into painting. So next month's lesson will be a painting lesson. And I have probably at least like 6 more projects in mind that I think are going to be useful for the Atelier tier. After that, it's kind of dealer's choice. Eventually, it will culminate with an advanced portrait. And I'm yet to figure out exactly how I want to break up that lesson, but advanced portrait basically means like a head and hand. So we're going to be working on a portrait that's like a full, upper body of someone. Subject TBD. So that's where the end's going to be. And there'll be a few projects kind of leading up to that. But not more. I don't have more than like maybe 6 other projects kind of planned. We'll just have to see kind of where that leaves us. I want to be a little bit open-ended though, because I feel like there's maybe other stuff that I didn't think of, or stuff that just needs to be kind of filled in when the time comes. And there'll be a lot of other projects in between that. So it's anyway. Marco Fontalan says, have you ever had an experience using Viridian or Venetian red in skin tones, and do you recommend it? Yeah, I've definitely used both, and I think they're really cool. Viridian's an awesome color. Viridian is a green, right? That's really intense. If you're probably a landscape painter, probably you already have Viridian in your palette. If you're someone who likes, vibrant cold colors. Probably you also have viridian in your palette as well. So I think it's really awesome. Venetian red, I'm a little bit less on the awesome side of. Venetian red is like an earth red, which can be exchanged, not synonymously, but in a very similar way with like an English red or a Pozzuoli red, or there's a lot of different like kind of names for these strong earthy reds. I remember them from my days as a student, where they would kind of dominate my palette, and I'm just not like in love with them really. I find like a Venetian red, for instance, to be like a very kind of bricky red. Like it's a very kind of I don't know. It's not like a red violet, but it's definitely not like a red orange. I don't know. It's just I didn't like it that much. I mean, some people will love it and use it to great effect. I just happen to not be one of them. So for whatever that's worth, I love Viridian. Not so much into like a Venetian red, but I could see how the combination of those two could be really nice in a skin tone as well, right? Because the Venetian red and the Viridian will be like complementary colors, and eventually will probably balance each other out in a really nice way. Just getting some cool temperatures down in here now. Madeline Pater says, do you recommend that we get the Bridgeman book to study parallel with the Bridgeman lessons? You either can or cannot. As I understand it, I think that a lot of his books have online some version of like an open source, availability, so that probably you could get them without paying for them if you wanted to. So I mean, I don't see why not. If you're interested in the subject matter, eventually it will come to be useful to you for sure. All right, where are we at, people? Where are we at here? Arjen Bergsma says, may I ask if you think you can become as good as one who attended the Repin Academy, Angel Academy, or your atelier through just self-education? Yeah, following online courses, reading books. Yeah, like can you get good studying by yourself? Yeah, I mean, sure. It's not like any reason that you can, to get as good. What is this? There's somebody knocking at the door. Yeah, I think. Yeah, I don't know. There's somebody at the door, but I can't answer it because I'm live streaming. I think it's like. I feel like it's like trick-or-treaters that are late. Anyway. What was I saying? Yeah, can you get as good as if you attended the Repin Academy? I mean, the Repin Academy is super intense, right? So I don't know. I mean, listen, you can study a lot, you can learn a lot. Depending upon where you put your efforts, you can go a long way just with commitment, dedication, and some good instruction. I think if you have a lot of like a really high ambition, I would say that you should definitely investigate also getting some like one-on-one lessons with a good instructor, because there's going to be things that maybe you don't totally understand early on that you need like a lot of clarification on. That's going to come from a good teacher. I mean, that's what we're here for in a way, right? Is to make sure that you're not working too hard with the wrong ideas, essentially. Let's see. I need to get this a little bit lighter down here. It's really light and really cool, actually, on the neck, which is let's see how blue we can get that without like freaking anybody out. That is a nice kind of cool flesh tone there, eh? Let's even get some green into it. Why not? Yeah, that's nice. You know, all those questions earlier in the stream about Bob Ross, now like they have me like nervous. Like I'm gonna start going, oh, that's a happy little halftone color right there. Start like talking like Bob Ross. If I do that, call me out, catch me on it, because I don't want to be. That ain't me. All right, let's see. Rumen Plamanov says, have you read any of Ernst Gombrich's books? I have not. I have not. Send me a link. Let's see here. Some other questions coming in. Libero Ruglio says, in your opinion, what would be the steps for a painter to become an independent artist? It's something I'm struggling with. I may not have the continuity in the commissions many times, or a simple word of mouth, and sometimes even turned down for lack of free time, but I'm trying to change. You know, get rid of the full-time job and push exclusively on painting. Yeah, you know, the business of art is, it's complicated and it's simple, I guess. The way that it's simple is that you can't become a full-time artist without the income. So naturally, we need to like solve for that problem. But I do think it's also something where a lot of times, like, we put the cart very far ahead of the horse, which is to say, like, we think about like income, right? We think like, oh, I'm making this artwork, I need to make a living, you know, so how do I derive the money from it? I think probably what you need to start asking yourself is like, who is my audience? Like, who is interested in what I do? Is anybody interested in what I do? Like, do I do like totally weird paintings of stuff that nobody's ever heard of before? Or do I do like landscape paintings, like plein air landscape paintings? So in the case of like a landscape painter, there's plenty of great examples of artists who have figured out how to make a living from landscape painting. Then you would just go look at them, see what they do, right? You know, some of them will show in galleries. Some of them will, you know, be kind of self-employed. Some of them will teach workshops. You know, there's so many different, there's as many different ways to like earn a living from painting as there are different kinds of painters. I think best case scenario, what you want to do is look for someone who's doing something similar to what you want to do, and try to determine in the best way that you can without being a creeper and like emailing them like really creepy questions. You know, like, how do they engage with their audience? You know, how do they sell their work? And then just try to essentially do some version of that. It's not really rocket science, and don't mean to say that by that it's easy, but it's also just not as complicated, I think, as people make it. You know. Because our artwork is so unique and so singular. I think sometimes like we take that thinking like also into our marketing, like, or somehow we like get this idea that I don't know. I think there's a lot of like weird ideas about being a professional painter out there. You know, like a lot of artists are not like into, you know, they want to make a living, but they don't want to talk about money, you know, they don't want to talk about the business of art or things like that. But I just think that in some ways, that's the simple part, right? Also because, you know, people have been doing it for long enough that there's some, you know, business models out there. You want to know what I do? You know, I mean, I started building an audience, you know, maybe 6 years ago when I was still a teacher at an academy, and eventually it came to the place where I understood, you know, how I could become independent through doing that, though. But it wasn't like I started out on social media or something in order to make a living. You know, I just did it because it's whatever I was into. And maybe this is also, let's say this is like a big bit of advice to give. Don't like figure out all the stuff you want to do and the business you want to do and then start with social media. You know, I see people make this mistake over and over and over. Listen up. Don't like do the business model, become an expert artist, do all the things that you need to do for 20 years and then start like a social media account like on Instagram and YouTube and whatever. Now that you've arrived and everything's perfect and everything's ready. First of all, those times are never going to come. No artist ever feels like they've arrived and that everything's perfect. Start growing an audience while you're building your skills and while you're building your concept of your business. Then by the time your audience has grown to a particular size, you might be able to say, hey, now that there's however 20,000 of you, I made this course, or I'm having an exhibition, or I'm doing a studio sale. You know, there's so many different ways that you can kind of engage with people and support your artwork. But of course, like speaking as someone like who likes to do it themselves, you need to get that horse well in front of the cart. If you understand my metaphor there. You need to think about audience building and how you can communicate with the world. And it's not rocket science. You know, like we don't have to, you don't have to have, you know, cameras that cost you $30,000 or something just to make a video for YouTube. You know, you can literally just start out with absolutely nothing. You know, I started out with an iPhone. I had an iPhone 8 that had about 16 gigabytes of storage on it. And that was like the first like bunch of videos that I made of my work. And I had no idea what I was going to do with it. But it was just something that I thought was kind of engaging and interesting. And, you know, I was kind of happy to just like get my artwork out there and like show people, you know, what I was doing, because for an artist, sometimes it just feels like you're working in the dark, like you're working in a cave, you know? And there's kind of nobody like seeing all the hard work that you do. You know, then comes social media, and you have this ability to like show people like what you're up to. And I just always thought that was such a great opportunity for artists, you know, because I mean, talk about getting rid of the middleman, you know, or the middle woman, as the case may be. You know, connecting directly with the people who are into the stuff that you do. I mean, it doesn't get better than that, you know, in terms of your ability to kind of become professional. Yeah. So that was a long riff on I don't know what. TJS is saying, do you need to study anatomy? Can't you just copy the shadow shape exactly? I mean, I don't know. If you, like, here's the deal. Like, you don't need to do anything. You know? I mean, there's no handbook that says in order to be good at, you know, this, you know, you have to do ... or you have to learn it this way. I think if you're not interested at all in anatomy, then don't learn anatomy. You know, it's not going to hand itself to you on a silver platter. Like, it's something that you really have to work quite hard to grasp all the kind of functions of anatomy in representational work. And if you absolutely are not interested, I don't think that stuff's gonna like just jump off the page to you. If you do think it's interesting, then go for it. I think that it's really been something that was transformative for me. But you gotta really want it to get down to the bottom of it. I think it's kind of like anything that you're doing in painting and drawing. Like if you have the desire and the mentality to get there, I think that you can. Just means that. And by the way, it's not, you have to make your decision today. Like maybe you find out after a long time that, oh, like maybe anatomy is really interesting. Maybe I'm more interested in it than I thought I was. And then that's the time that you would want to get into it. But definitely nothing like arrives without your passion, frankly. So you got to line that up, I think, first before anything else. Now, TJ says, I came to painting from being a sculptor. I think that has been very valuable to me, sort of intuiting bone structure. Yeah, no, I mean, sculptors working in 3D definitely relates to working 2D. Yeah. Michelle Girard is saying that she missed when I mentioned what the paper is. You're probably going to miss it this time too. But it's an oil painting paper from Legion. It will be, as soon as it's available commercially, I'll let everybody know. Let's see. Crime 4L says, is there any technique you're trying to incorporate in your art? Anything new you want to try? That's a kind of cool question. Like new. I haven't been focused so much on new lately as much as I've been focused on like, just working with the concepts that are currently like most useful to me. Let me get back to you on that. Like, I'm not sure. Like, I know that there's an answer to that question somewhere, but I'm not sure what it is just yet. By the way, like, am I doing a terrible job here? I gotta get my values going or this thing's gonna fall apart. This is that like symptom of talking way too much when painting. This is like when you're working in the studio, you know, and like you've got someone who like is really chatty or whatever, and you're like talking to them the whole time, and then like you're trying to focus on something, but you can't do it. That's what is happening to me. Yeah, so at the moment, I'm probably, I mean, I could probably bring this together if I was doing what I was supposed to do, focusing really hard here. I bet I could probably like pull this one off, but I don't think it's going to happen until I stop answering questions. Which is nobody's fault but mine. But let me see if I can get some decent color values in here. Because by the way, like most of what you have to do in painting is just getting good color values. If you do that, you know, a lot of the painting should, if not fall into place, should at the very least reveal itself to you. You know, if all these flesh tones are kind of working together in the right way. Let's see. Samuel Coomer says, do you like using gouache as an easy color training medium for plein air or portraiture? Yeah, I think gouache is pretty cool. I think probably not too dissimilar to acrylic. Madeline Pater is asking if I will change to titanium white when I've got a puppy. Real talk, that's a really good question, Madeline. I'm going to have to confer with Cornelia about that. JD Anarchy is saying, I find myself wanting to do more representational than realism because it feels more creative. How do you feel about representation versus realism? Maybe I'm missing the difference there. I've always considered those to be similar. Expand the question and I'll definitely get to it. Priya Kumari is asking if she can get this reference image. Actually, if you go to my Patreon, there's a free post that has the live stream from when I actually blocked in this drawing. And then the source image is on that. So you can definitely get it there. You can even get it for free because I just thought, for people doing, working along with me on this, probably they'd like to have a source image to work from. So in a 100% free post, you can get this source image on my Patreon. You probably just have to like scroll for a moment to track down that post. But you can definitely get it from there. Yeah. And then of course, like with my Patreon page, like if you're always looking for like model images to work from, I have a pretty extensive library of source images that are available to subscribers. You can download them. You can make paintings. You can make artwork from them and sell it. It's wide open. They're only there for you to use. Let's see. David Stocko is asking why I use straight lines. Straight lines are kind of analogous to planes, and planes are a pretty essential building block of form. So that is the interrelation. That's why I use them. That's what they're kind of about in my work. Yeah. By the way, there's like a long version of that as well. But I would probably just refer you to my Patreon videos in terms of explaining like what it is about straight lines that makes them so practical and so useful and so indispensable actually if you're going to be working certainly on the human figure. I think that they have also an outsized importance working on the human body because there's so much complexity to human form, and simplification is absolutely necessary if you're going to think create great kind of dynamic representation in terms of the human form. Yeah. So I think, by the way, we've been at it for about an hour and 40. I'm going to wrap this up pretty soon. There's a lot of questions still coming in. I'm going to see if I can hit a few of them fast. Vibrat Chaturvedi says, your models are always look like they're from the 18th century. Pretty awesome. How do you decide in choosing one? Sometimes the models come to you. Edgar Garcia says, what would you say is the biggest difference in the finished painting quality between an Alla Prima versus working on layers? Which one do you prefer? Each has their positives and negatives. The biggest difference in between the two is probably a refinement of form and maybe real critical fidelity to your subject. I don't really have a preference. Probably I like refined stuff more. Joke Knee is asking, any advice on making drawings to sell or how much the price compared to originals? It all depends upon your market and your audience. Making prints of drawings, it becomes a lower ticket item. And sometimes that can be really, really helpful. Explaining my theory on mixing skin tones, that's a whole lesson in itself. I got to do that later on. There's more questions, but I'll tell you what, folks. We've done an hour 42. I'm a bit talked out. We got to an interesting place. We didn't get to a finished place with this one, but what are you gonna do? Eventually, I'll post a finished video of this either on Patreon or somewhere where you can get the full. I'll probably spend another couple hours painting this, but I can't do it while talking as well. I want to say thank you for checking out the video. Please remember to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, all that YouTube stuff. And if you're interested in studying with me, my Patreon is always there. Really, really cool stuff coming up with the Atelier tier, wrapping up the drawing program there, getting into Bridgeman's work. The Sargent tutorials are going to be coming up next month. We're going to get into grisaille painting in a sphere. So listen, a whole lot of cool stuff. And literally the most bonkers part about it is that it's $10 to actually subscribe and get access to 400 or 500 hours of lessons. So if you like that stuff, links in the description, and I will see you guys next Wednesday, 4 p.m. Oslo time. I'll post about it, and I'll see you all then.